2 days ago, I got my new Framework Mainboard, a Core Ultra 3 X7358H. Yeah. Since a lot of people are waiting for their Framework Pros, I figured I would share my experience. If you're new here, I made a custom build using the parts of a Framework 13, but in the form of a portable iMac-like computer. Link below if you want to 3D print your own, by the way. The reason I bring it up is because, well, obviously it's not a laptop, so the thermals, performance, etc. will be slightly different to the actual Framework laptops. However, I can compare this mainboard to my previous Framework mainboard, which was the Ryzen 7 7840U. That mainboard served me really well, but after 2.5 years of using it for prototypes, poking it, changing the fan, disconnecting, reconnecting all the ports, taking it on trips all over, I unfortunately finally killed it by accident. Luckily, a few days later, Framework announced the new mainboard and laptops. I placed my order right away, and I've been patiently waiting, looking forward to having a portable computer again. So, I was really excited when I finally received it, and it took me about 15 minutes to swap out the old broken mainboard for the new one. The power button, ports, connectors, everything is pretty much in the same place except for the speakers cable, which is a couple millimeters off, not a big deal. It was pretty much a drop-in replacement even for my unofficial build, which is nice. It was my first time installing an LP cam module, and it was pretty easy. Just a trio of screws, and they have numbers so that you tie them in the right order. Make sure to check their instructions, they're pretty good. So it was time for testing. I mostly wanted to try my use cases. Obviously, pretty much any machine these days can do browsing and checking email just fine. I wanted to test my most demanding uses, which are visual effects compositing and programming with a local LLM for certain references. I did run Geekbench, but it honestly didn't tell me much. I got just under 14,000 points on the new machine, and my desktop, which has a bigger processor, got 14,500. What does that mean? I don't know, cool. So I just decided to go ahead and test by actually doing the things that I do. In visual effects, I mostly use Nuke, and I have a simple test render that I've ran as a benchmark in all the computers I've had access to in the last few years. Nuke is very good at using the whole CPU, and my test render doesn't have any effects that use the GPU, so I found this to be a good multi-core performance test for my needs. And this new board did really well. Compared to my previous Ryzen 7 board, the new one was about 24% faster. It also beat a Mac Mini M4 by about 6%. The only machines it didn't beat, and by a wide margin, were my main desktop and my friend's 12900K, but those are top-tier desktop CPUs from a few years ago. However, if you compare it to my previous desktop, the top processor for a desktop in 2019, that one was left in the dust, with the framework being about 70% faster and using less than a tenth of the power. Besides visual effects, the other demanding tasks that I have are the occasional use of local LLMs when I'm programming. Unfortunately, I don't have my older framework and I didn't benchmark it before it died, so I can only compare this current framework to my desktop machine, which has an NVIDIA 4060 Ti with 16 gigs of VRAM. It's not a top-of-the-line GPU by any means, but I would say it's on the high end of the average, if that makes sense. And definitely one of the most common GPUs out there, so I think it's fair. The models I tested are Qwen 3 Coder, which is my current go-to, 5.4, which is my previous go-to, and I also tested Deepseek R1. I don't really use the reasoning models because I mostly use LLMs for simple things like how to do X in this language, or convert this JSON into a struct. And the reasoning models often feel like the diary of an angsty, insecure teenager, which is funny the first time, but not when you're waiting for it to run through all the options and what's the best way to say hi to you. Since I want you to think it myself, thank you very much, I prefer more straightforward models. Nevertheless, I know they're useful for some stuff and a lot of people use them, so I did test Deepseek for completeness. Using regular vanilla Ollama was only using the CPU, and when you pair it against the 4060 Ti, well, it's definitely slower, but to be honest, it's totally usable, particularly Qwen 3. Anecdotally, I can tell you it feels almost twice as fast as the 7840U, but I don't have data for that machine and it's been almost 2 months since it died. I can tell you it's noticeably faster though, and I would be okay using Ollama like that. But I found this project called Nollama by Ozum. It's made specifically for Intel CPU GPUs. So I downloaded it and yeah, It's pretty awesome. The model selection is more limited, but the models I use are there, and now that they are using the GPU, yeah, they run much faster. Still not as fast as the 4060 Ti, but they're more than fast enough. Again, it uses a tenth of the power and you can take it with you everywhere, so it's great. Speaking of power usage, the last test I did was power usage. What? I did run the same test on my previous mainboard, so I do have some data for this. However, I did run the test on the other mainboard on the smaller battery, so I had to do some math to compensate for that. But basically, the 7840U would have lasted about 5 hours and 15 minutes. So I ran the same test on this machine. When it reached 5 hours and 15 minutes, which is the total that the previous mainboard lasted, this computer was at 52%. So this one will last twice as long as the 7840U. In conclusion, yeah, these boards are pretty good. The Intel Core 3 X7358H. The name sucks, but the chips are really nice. They're much faster than the current AMD ones, and they're twice as efficient, basically, or at least the ones I've tested last twice as long. And that also means that they get less hot, and I barely heard the fan spin while I was doing all my tests. And obviously, I've only had it for a couple of days, so we'll see, but so far it's looking pretty good. I'm really happy with the upgrade, even if it was forced upon me by myself. I did get a little lucky with the RAM price, and I still have the other RAM to salvage, so that might be something. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. If you would like to build your own computer like this, check the link in the description. You can 3D print your own, or you can buy a kit. I'm looking forward to the new touchscreen from Framework, because while I meant this to be more of a portable desktop and not a tablet, it will be useful to have touch for quick actions when I don't want to pull out my keyboard or mouse and I just need to do something quick. And since I'm going to have an extra screen, I'm looking into a fun way to integrate it as a built-in second monitor. So subscribe to check that out. That one's still in the works. So, also, I will be at Open Source in a couple of weeks, July 17th. Not in a booth or anything, just attending, but we might bump into each other there. Who knows? I don't have that many followers, so I can't do a meetup or anything, but for you, one person, I might see you there. Anyway, have a good one, guys. Bye.